The ancient recording flickered to life in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Tidewalker stood before the massive curved seats, where representatives from dozens of worlds watched with barely hidden boredom. The hologram showed events from 200 years ago, when space was younger and humanity was just another struggling species trying to survive among the stars. Captain Jin Su-min's voice echoed through the chamber, crackling with age and static. Her human colony ship drifted dead in space, life support failing, thousands of families trapped in the dark between worlds. Their jump drive had broken catastrophically, stranding them light years from any habitable planet. This is Captain Jin Su-min, of the colony vessel New Dawn. The recording played. Our drive core is dead. We have maybe 6 days of air left. If anyone receives this message, we have children aboard. Please, help. The recording shifted to show the Kithani vessels that answered the call. Small, graceful ships designed for water worlds, not the vast emptiness of space. Admiral Reefsinger had led 3 cargo ships to the dying human fleet, even though his own people were struggling to build their first real space colony. We hear you, humans. Reefsinger's translated voice came through the speakers. We are coming. The Kithani had shared everything. Food, water, medicine, even the coordinates to a perfect world they had found but could not use themselves. They gave the humans detailed star charts, trade agreements, and most importantly, hope. They asked for nothing in return except friendship. Ambassador Tidewalker paused the recording and looked around the chamber. The representatives were checking their personal devices, chatting quietly among themselves, clearly uninterested in ancient history. Honored Council, Tidewalker said, his voice carrying the musical quality of his aquatic species. 200 years ago, my people saved 40,000 human lives. We did this not for profit or alliance, but because it was right. Councillor Vex Prime of the Valorian Empire leaned forward in his seat, his reptilian features showing mild irritation. Yes, very touching. But what does this have to do with your current request, Ambassador? My forces are already moving to secure your system. Resistance is pointless. Around the chamber, other representatives nodded. The Valorian Empire was the strongest military power in the galaxy. When they decided to take a system, they took it. The Kithani homeworld had valuable deep ocean minerals, and the Empire needed those resources. We call upon ancient bonds. Tidewalker continued. The humans made a formal oath to repay this debt. Captain Jin Su-min signed a treaty, promising aid if we ever needed it. Several representatives laughed openly now. Councillor Zephix from the Crystalline Collective spoke up, her voice like ringing bells. Ambassador, the humans vanished from galactic politics over a century ago. Most records suggest they went extinct after some failed experiment. They are hardly in a position to help anyone. Their last known colonies were abandoned decades ago. Added Representative Korth from the Trade Federation. Empty worlds, dead cities, whatever the humans became, they are gone. End quote. Vex Prime stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. Even if these humans still existed, what could one minor species do against the full might of the Valorian fleet? I have 200 warships surrounding your world. This debt you speak of is meaningless. Tidewalker reached into his ceremonial robes and pulled out a small device, ancient but still functioning. The other representatives stopped talking as they recognized it. A quantum beacon, the kind used for emergency communications across impossible distances. The debt is recorded in our most sacred archives, Tidewalker said quietly. Captain Jin Su-min promised that if we ever called, humanity would answer. She gave us this beacon and specific coordinates where we could reach them, no matter how much time passed. Coordinates to empty space, scoffed Vex Prime. Your saviors are long dead, Ambassador. Tidewalker activated the beacon. The device hummed to life, sending its message across the galaxy to coordinates that galactic sensors had marked as uninhabited for generations. The chamber fell silent as everyone waited. Nothing happened for several minutes. Representatives began muttering among themselves again, some expressing sympathy for the desperate ambassador, while others called it a waste of time. Then the beacon chirped. A response was coming through. The voice that emerged was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. "This is Commander Park Min-jun of the Human Defense Corps. We received your call. Ambassador Tidewalker, we remember the debt owed to the Cathani people. Admiral Reefsinger's kindness has not been forgotten." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Vex Prime stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Impossible. Humans do not have the technology for quantum communications across such distances. The debt is acknowledged." Park's voice continued through the beacon. "According to our records, the Cathani people saved 40,000 human lives and asked nothing in return except friendship. This debt has remained unpaid for exactly 203 years, 7 months, and 12 days. Tidewalker felt his gill slits flutter with hope. But around the chamber, the mood was changing. Fear crept into many faces. If the humans still existed and had technology this advanced, what else might they have developed during their century of silence? "Human vessel, identify yourself," Vex Prime commanded. "What is your current position and fleet strength?" There was a pause before Park responded. "Counselor Vex Prime of the Valorian Empire. Our records show your forces have surrounded the Cathani homeworld with hostile intent. You have threatened the people who once saved us from extinction." "This is Valorian business," Vex Prime snarled. "Withdraw from this matter or face the consequences." Another pause. When Park spoke again, his voice carried something new. Something that made even the bravest representatives shiver slightly. "Counselor Vex Prime, we formally request that you withdraw your forces from Cathani space. The debt must be paid, and we will not allow harm to come to those under our protection." "Your protection?" Vex Prime laughed harshly. "One species against the Valorian Empire? You will be crushed like insects." The final words from the beacon made the entire chamber fall silent. "Payment is incoming. All ships, prepare for debt fulfillment protocols. The honor of humanity will be satisfied." The beacon went quiet. In the silence that followed, every representative began to realize that they might have greatly underestimated what humanity had become during their long absence from galactic politics. Tidewalker looked around the chamber with hope growing in his heart. The debt would be paid, just as Captain Jin Su-min had promised so long ago. He only hoped the galaxy was ready for what that payment might bring. Admiral Corvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Valorian dreadnought Iron Talon, watching his tactical displays with satisfaction. 200 warships surrounded the blue-green world of the Cathani, the most powerful fleet the Empire had assembled in decades. The aquatic species below had no real defenses, just a few orbital stations and some converted cargo ships. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're detecting strange energy readings at the system's edge." Corvin barely glanced up from his reports. "Probably sensor ghosts. The Cathani use different frequencies for their equipment." "No, sir. These are massive. 3 contacts, approaching fast." Now Corvin did look up. On the main screen, 3 objects were dropping out of hyperspace. Ships, but unlike anything in the galactic databases. They were huge, each one nearly the size of a Valorian battlecruiser. But their design was completely alien. The hulls seemed to shift and flow like living tissue, but clearly artificial. Organic curves mixed with geometric precision in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral," his sensor officer said nervously, "I'm reading impossible energy signatures from those vessels. The computers can't classify their weapon systems or drive technology." "Sir, we're being hailed by the lead ship." "Put it through." The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. Commander Park Min-jun looked exactly like what Corvin expected from the old records. Brown skin, dark eyes, unremarkable features. But something in his expression made the Admiral uncomfortable. "I am Commander Park Min-jun of the Human Defense Corps," the man said calmly. "We are here to honor our debt to the Cathani people." Corvin laughed, though it sounded forced even to his own ears. 3 ships against 200? Human, you are either very brave or very stupid. "We prefer to think of ourselves as very thorough," Park replied. "Admiral Corvin, your forces have surrounded people who once saved my species from extinction. We cannot allow this to continue. Your people abandoned galactic civilization over a century ago," Corvin said, his confidence returning. "Whatever backwater world you've been hiding on, it hasn't prepared you for modern warfare." Behind Park on the human bridge, Corvin could see other crew members moving about their duties. They all had the same unsettling calm, as if they knew something he didn't. "We have been watching, Admiral," Park said. "We know exactly what modern warfare looks like. We've seen how the Valorian Empire treats weaker species. We've watched your expansion, your methods, your casual cruelty to those who cannot defend themselves. Then you know what happens to those who oppose us," Corvin snarled. "Withdraw now, and we might let you live." Park tilted his head slightly, like someone listening to a distant sound. "We've tried to avoid this moment for generations, Admiral. My people chose isolation precisely because we knew this day would eventually come." "What day?" "The day we would have to show the galaxy what we've become." Corvin had heard enough. "All ships, target the human vessels. Prepare to fire." "Admiral," Park's voice cut through the bridge chatter, "I'm going to give you one last chance. Withdraw your forces. Leave the Cathani in peace. This debt can still be paid without unnecessary violence." "Fire," Corvin commanded. The Valorian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, gravity bombs, enough firepower to crack a small moon. The space around the 3 human ships lit up like a new star being born. When the light faded, all 3 human vessels remained exactly where they had been, not a scratch visible on their flowing hulls. "Impossible," Corvin whispered. "Your turn is finished, Admiral," Park said. His voice hadn't changed, but something behind his eyes had shifted. "Now, it's ours." The lead human ship moved forward, not like a vessel traveling through space, but like space itself was bending around it. Suddenly, half of Corvin's port squadron found themselves trapped in a bubble of twisted space-time, their ships spinning helplessly as gravity went insane around them. The second human ship released a cloud of something that looked like glowing dust. The particles spread across dozens of Valorian vessels, and one by one, their computer systems began changing. Weapons powered down, shields flickered, and navigation systems started displaying poetry instead of coordinates. The third human ship did nothing visible at all. But across 20 different Valorian vessels, maintenance crews began reporting the same impossible thing. Strange beings made of pure energy were walking through their hulls, passing through solid matter like it wasn't there. Every weapon these beings touched simply stopped working. "What are you?" Corvin demanded, over the communication channel. "We are what humanity chose to become when we realized the galaxy wasn't ready for us," Park answered. "We are the children of the people your empire would have crushed or enslaved. We are the debt that must be paid." Corvin watched in growing terror as his mighty fleet was systematically disabled without a single Valorian death. Ships drifted helplessly, weapons offline, crews panicking as their technology rebelled against them. "This is impossible. You're using technology that doesn't exist." "It exists now," Park said simply. "We had 2 centuries of isolation. To think, to grow, to evolve beyond the limitations that bound us when Captain Jin Su-min first met Admiral Reefsinger." "What do you want?" Corvin asked, his voice shaking. "We want to honor our debt. The Cathani saved 40,000 human lives. We will save their entire species and their homeworld from you." On his tactical display, Corvin watched more of his ships fall prey to impossible human weapons. Gravity manipulation, reality-altering technology, beings of pure energy. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a demonstration. "Admiral." Park's voice carried new urgency. "My sensors indicate several of your ships are charging planet-cracking weapons." Corvin's blood went cold. Some of his captains, in their panic and rage, were preparing to destroy the Cathani homeworld, rather than let it fall into human hands. "Stop them!" Corvin screamed into his communications array. But it was too late. Park's expression changed for the first time since the conversation began. The calm professionalism vanished, replaced by something ancient and terrible. "You threaten those under our protection," Park said quietly. That's when Admiral Corvin realized he had made the worst mistake in galactic history. The humans weren't just advanced. They were something else entirely. Something that had been carefully staying hidden until this moment. And now they were angry. The planet-killer weapons fired. 3 massive Valorian dreadnoughts released beams of pure destruction capable of cracking worlds in half. The weapons had never missed their target in the Empire's long history of conquest. They missed. Admiral Corvin watched in horror as the beams passed harmlessly through empty space where the Cathani homeworld had been just moments before. The blue-green planet was gone, along with its 3 moons and orbital stations. "Impossible," he whispered. "You can't move an entire planet." "We didn't move it." Commander Park's voice came through the speakers, calm as ever despite what had just happened. "We translated it to a safer dimensional space. The Cathani people are unharmed. We can why for weather." On the human ship's bridge, Corvin could see crew members working at stations that seemed to be made of living light. Their fingers moved through holographic displays that showed star charts of impossible complexity. Maps of space that included dimensions Valorian science couldn't even detect. "What are you?" Corvin demanded, his voice breaking. "We are what happens when a species chooses evolution over extinction," Park answered. "When Captain Jin Sumin's people were saved by the Cathani, we made a choice. We could remain weak and vulnerable, or we could become something greater." The 3 human ships began to change. Their hulls flowed like water, revealing their true nature. They weren't ships at all, but extensions of consciousness made manifest in physical space. Living vessels that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to think about. 200 years ago, my people transcended individual physical form, Park continued. We became something beyond your understanding, while keeping what made us human. Our compassion, our sense of honor, our loyalty to those who showed us kindness. Corvin's fleet was now completely disabled. Every weapon system offline, every ship drifting helplessly. But not a single Valorian had been killed. The humans had disabled a force of 200,000 beings without causing a single death. "Sir," Corvin's communications officer stammered, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human ships are appearing in every major system." "How many ships?" Corvin asked weakly. "That's just it, sir. It's the same 3 ships. They're in multiple places at once." Park's image on the screen seemed to nod. "We exist across many dimensions simultaneously, Admiral. Your linear understanding of space and time is limited." Inacross. Suddenly, the space around Corvin's flagship rippled. A new ship appeared. Larger than the others, its design even more impossible. This one seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, its hull shifting through colors that had no names. "I am Admiral Lee Soo-jin of the Human Defense Corps," a new voice announced. "Admiral Corvin, you have threatened innocent beings under our protection. This cannot be tolerated." Corvin realized with growing dread that he was now facing not just Park's force, but what appeared to be an entire human fleet that existed across multiple realities at once. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Withdraw your forces," Lee said simply. "Return to Valorian space. Never threaten the Cathani again. And if we refuse?" The space around Corven's flagship changed. Suddenly, he was no longer looking at the Cathani system. Outside his viewports, he could see the red sun of the Valorian homeworld. His flagship had been moved instantly across half the galaxy. Admiral Corven. Park's voice came through the speakers. You are now in orbit above your own capital world. Look around you. Oh. Corven's sensors showed him something that made his blood freeze. Human ships surrounded his homeworld. Not 3 ships this time, but hundreds. Each one more impossible than the last, their designs shifting and flowing like living dreams. We are not conquerors. Admiral Lee's voice explained. We do not seek to rule or destroy, but we will not allow the strong to prey upon the weak, especially those who once showed kindness to our people. What are you going to do to us? Corven whispered. Nothing, if you choose wisely, Park answered. We will return your fleet to Valorian space unharmed. Your people will live. Your worlds will remain yours. But your expansion into peaceful systems ends today. Corven looked at his tactical displays. Every Valorian military base, every shipyard, every weapons facility was surrounded by human vessels. His entire civilization was at the mercy of beings who could apparently rewrite the laws of physics at will. How long have you been watching us? He asked. Since the day we chose transcendence, Lee replied. We've been protecting weaker species from empires like yours for generations. Quietly, subtly, hoping we would never have to reveal ourselves. You could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago. Conquest was never our goal, Park said. We wanted only to live in peace and honor our obligations. But when you threatened the Cathani, you forced our hand. The quantum beacon in the Galactic Council chambers crackled to life again. Ambassador Tidewalker stood before the assembled representatives, who were receiving frantic reports from across their territories. Honored Council. Park's voice came through the beacon, addressing the galaxy's leadership directly. Humanity has returned to galactic affairs. We come not as conquerors but as guardians of the debt we owe to those who showed us mercy. Counselor Vex Prime had gone pale, his reptilian features slack with shock. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species were receiving similar reports. Human ships appearing in their space, demonstrating impossible technology, but making no aggressive moves. What do you want from us? Vex Prime asked through the beacon. We want what we've always wanted, Park replied. Peace. The Cathani people saved my species when we were helpless. Now we return that gift, not just to them but to all species who choose cooperation over conquest. Admiral Corven found his voice again. And if we choose to fight? The human ships around the Valorian homeworld began to glow softly, their hulls pulsing with power that registered on no known scale. Admiral. Park's voice carried a sadness that made even hardened soldiers shiver. You have seen what we can do when we hold back. Please don't force us to show you what we can do when we don't. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Corven of the mighty Valorian Empire formally surrendered without firing a shot. The debt was about to be paid in full, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours. Representatives from every major power sat in stunned silence as reports continued to flood in from across their territories. Human ships had appeared in over 300 systems simultaneously, all of them demonstrating the same impossible technology. Ambassador Tidewalker stood at the center of the chamber, no longer the desperate diplomat pleading for help. The humans had returned his homeworld to normal space, completely unharmed. His people were safe, and the ancient debt was finally being honored. They're not attacking anyone, reported Counselor Zephix from the Crystalline Collective. The human ships are just watching, waiting. Waiting for what? Demanded Representative Korth from the Trade Federation. The quantum beacon activated again, and Commander Park's calm voice filled the chamber. We're waiting to see what kind of galaxy you choose to become. What do you mean? Asked Counselor Vex Prime, his voice much smaller than usual. For the past 2 centuries, we've been documenting everything, Park explained. Every act of cruelty, every unprovoked invasion, every species enslaved or destroyed by those with greater power. We have complete records of who helped and who harmed. On the screens around the chamber, holographic displays began showing data that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. The Valorian Empire's expansion history, the Crystalline Collective's mining operations that poisoned entire worlds, the Trade Federation's economic slavery of agricultural planets. How did you gather all this information? Vex Prime asked weakly. We've been among you all along, Park said simply. Some of our people chose to maintain physical forms and live quietly in your societies. They've been watching, recording, protecting when they could. Admiral Lee's voice joined the conversation. We saved the Zephyrian refugees when your mining operations poisoned their homeworld, Counselor Zephix. We made it look like a natural exodus to avoid detection. Counselor Zephix's crystalline features went dim. That was you? We thought they found a new planet on their own. Dim. We guided the Corthan agricultural revolts when your corporations started starving them. Another human voice added. Made it appear like spontaneous uprising. Representative Korth began to shake. The supply failures, the equipment malfunctions in our enforcement ships. All of us, Park confirmed. We've been preventing atrocities for generations, hoping you would eventually learn to be better on your own. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of human intervention became clear. Every major power had been unknowingly touched by human protection. Their worst excesses quietly limited by beings they thought were extinct. Why reveal yourselves now? Asked Ambassador Yelith from the Pacifist Coalition, one of the few representatives who looked hopeful rather than terrified. Because of the debt, Park said. When the Cathani called, we had to answer openly. Admiral Reefsinger's people saved us when we were weak. We could not repay that kindness through shadows and secrets. The main screen shifted to show the Cathani homeworld, restored to its proper place in space. Cities of coral and crystal gleamed beneath blue-green seas, completely untouched by Valorian weapons. The debt requires more than just saving one world, Admiral Lee's voice continued. It requires ensuring that what happened to the Cathani never happens to anyone again. Vex Prime stood up shakily. What are you proposing? A new galactic order, Park said. One based on the principles that guided Admiral Reefsinger 2 centuries ago. Help those weaker than yourself. Share resources with those in need. Choose cooperation over conquest. And if we refuse? Vex Prime asked, though his voice carried no real defiance. The human ships around every major world pulsed once with soft light. Just a pulse. But every species' sensors recorded energy levels that shouldn't have been possible. Then we will make the choice for you, Park said sadly. We had hoped to remain hidden forever, but honor demanded we act. Now that we're revealed, we cannot allow the galaxy to continue as it was. Representative Korth found his voice. You're talking about conquest, subjugation. No. Admiral Lee corrected. We're talking about guidance. The Valorian Empire will be restructured. Its military will be disbanded. Its aggressive expansion ended. But the Valorian people will be relocated to worlds where they can build something better. You can't just move entire civilizations, Vex Prime protested. We moved an entire planet earlier today, Park reminded him gently. Moving populations is considerably easier. Ambassador Tidewalker stepped forward. Honored Council, the humans offer you a choice. Accept their guidance willingly, or have it imposed upon you. Either way, the age of strong species preying upon weak ones is over. Around the chamber, representatives were checking their communication devices frantically. The reports were all the same. Human ships remained in their systems, making no aggressive moves but clearly prepared for anything. What about our sovereignty? demanded Counselor Zephix. Your sovereignty ends where others' suffering begins. Another human voice said. We've watched empires rise and fall, based on how they treated those weaker than themselves. The pattern always ends the same way, in collapse and misery for everyone. We're offering you a chance to break that pattern, Park added. To build something that lasts, something based on the kindness that Admiral Reefsinger showed to strangers in distress. The chamber buzzed with whispered conversations as representatives tried to understand their options. Several were clearly terrified, others seemed relieved that someone was finally powerful enough to stop the galaxy's endless cycle of war and oppression. How do we know you won't become tyrants yourselves? Asked Ambassador Yillith. Because we've had the power to conquer you for 2 centuries and chose not to, Admiral Lee replied. We became what we are, specifically to avoid the temptation of easy dominion. We transcended individual ambition when we transcended individual flesh. Park's voice carried a note of finality. The debt to the Cathani requires not just their safety, but the creation of a galaxy where species like them are protected, not preyed upon. We will build that galaxy with your cooperation, or without it. Vex Prime looked around the chamber at his fellow counselors, seeing fear and resignation on most faces. The Age of Empire was ending. Not through revolution or collapse, but through the intervention of beings so far beyond them that resistance was meaningless. What do you want us to do? He asked quietly. Help us, Park said simply. Help us build something worthy of Admiral Reefsinger's legacy. Help us create a galaxy where acts of kindness like his are normal, not exceptional. The debt was almost fully paid. Soon, the galaxy would learn what it meant to be guided by those who remembered what it felt like to be helpless, and what it meant to be saved. 1 year had passed since the humans revealed themselves to the galaxy. Ambassador Tidewalker stood in the same council chambers where he had once begged for help, but everything had changed. The seats were still arranged in the same great circle, but now they were filled with representatives who came to solve problems instead of create them. The Valorian Empire was gone. Not destroyed, but transformed. Former Admiral Corvin now served as a regional coordinator on New Valor, an agricultural world where his people were learning to grow food instead of weapons. The process had been gentle but firm. Every Valorian had been relocated to worlds where they could build peaceful communities under human guidance. The Arcturian mining dispute has been resolved, announced Councillor Dren, formerly of the Crystalline Collective's military wing. Both species have agreed to share the asteroid belt, according to the Cathani protocols. Tidewalker nodded approvingly. The Cathani protocols had become the foundation of the new galactic order. A set of principles based on cooperation, mutual aid, and protection of the weak. They were named in honor of Admiral Reefsinger and the act of kindness that had ultimately reshaped civilization. Any word from the human fleet? Asked Representative Mira, once a Trade Federation enforcer who now worked to ensure fair resource distribution across former Federation space. They remain in dimensional space, Tidewalker replied. Commander Park sends regular updates, but they have kept their promise to withdraw once we proved capable of maintaining peace. The transformation had been swift, but not violent. The humans had used their impossible technology to relocate entire populations, rebuild worlds damaged by wars, and establish new colonies for species that had been displaced by empires. Nobody had been killed, but the old order of conquest and oppression had died completely. The most remarkable change was in the people themselves. Without the constant threat of war and the example of peaceful cooperation, most species had quickly adapted to the new way of thinking. Trade disputes were settled through mediation instead of blockades. Territorial conflicts were resolved by creating new territories in previously uninhabitable systems that human technology made livable. I have a report from the Earth Restoration Project, announced Dr. Kim Yu-jin, one of the humans who had chosen to maintain physical form and work directly with the galactic community. Everyone in the chamber turned to listen. The humans had surprised everyone by beginning to restore their original homeworld, making it habitable again after centuries of apparent abandonment. The atmospheric processors are working perfectly, Doctor, Kim continued. Earth should be ready for limited colonization within another year. We're planning to make it a neutral meeting ground where all species can gather to discuss interstellar cooperation. Tidewalker felt a warm satisfaction at the news. Earth would become what the Galactic Council had always claimed to be. A place where differences could be settled through dialogue instead of force. What about the other projects? Asked Counselor Dren. The Zephyrian rehabilitation is complete. Their homeworld is clean and habitable again. The Corthan agricultural cooperatives are producing surplus food for the first time in generations. The former Valorian military personnel are adapting well to civilian life. The reports continued, each one detailing successful transformation of former conflict zones into peaceful communities. The humans had kept their promise. They were not ruling the galaxy, but they had made it impossible for anyone else to rule through force. A soft chime indicated an incoming message from dimensional space. The air in the center of the chamber shimmered, and Commander Park appeared as a hologram. He looked exactly the same as he had a year ago, but his expression was more relaxed. "Honored representatives," Park said, his voice carrying the same calm authority it had during the crisis. "We wanted to update you on our observations of the galactic transition." "We too, Commander," Tidewalker said formally. "It is good to hear from you." "The debt is paid," Park announced, and several representatives straightened in their seats. "Admiral Reefsinger's kindness has been repaid in full. The Cathani people are safe, and more importantly, a galaxy has been created where such kindness is normal rather than exceptional." The hologram gestured, and images appeared showing peaceful scenes from across known space. Former enemy species working together on construction projects. Multi-species research teams solving problems that had plagued individual worlds for generations. Children of different races playing together in integrated communities. "We had hoped this day would come," Park continued. "When we chose transcendence 2 centuries ago, our dream was that we might one day return to the galaxy and find it had grown into something worthy of Admiral Reefsinger's example." "Will you be returning to normal space permanently?" asked Dr. Kim. "Some of us will," Park replied. "We want to walk among the stars again, to see what you build with the foundation we've helped create. But most will remain in dimensional space, watching over you the way we did before, ready to help if needed." Ambassador Tidewalker stepped forward. "Commander, on behalf of all species represented here, I want to thank humanity for honoring their debt. But more than that, I want to thank you for showing us what we could become." "The credit belongs to Admiral Reefsinger and those like him," Park said. "We simply ensured that his legacy would spread to every corner of the galaxy." The hologram began to fade, but Park's voice remained clear. "Remember this day, all of you. Remember that strength without compassion leads to emptiness. But compassion backed by strength can reshape the universe." As the image disappeared, Tidewalker looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species, all working together to solve problems instead of creating them. The debt had been paid, but it had created something far greater than simple repayment. 6 months later, a small ceremony took place on the restored Cathani homeworld. A memorial statue was unveiled in the capital city, showing Admiral Reefsinger and Captain Jin Su-min shaking hands across the vast emptiness of space. The inscription was written in every galactic language. "To those who choose kindness over profit, cooperation over conquest, and hope over fear, the galaxy remembers." Tidewalker stood before the memorial with Dr. Kim and several other dignitaries, including Corvin, who had traveled from New Valor to attend the ceremony. "Do you think it will last?" Corvin asked quietly. Tidewalker looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, the humans were still watching, still protecting, still ready to ensure that kindness would never again go unanswered. "It will last," he said confidently, Because we finally learned the lesson Admiral Reef Singer taught so long ago. True strength is using your power to help others, not to dominate them. The debt had been repaid in full, and the galaxy was finally worthy of those who had paid it.